Sorry, hold up here so I can.
Mostly silent.
You can.
Do we know which Judy that is?
That's what I was just saying.
Is that Judy of Judy and Jody?
No.
All right. I'm showing 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and call to order the City Council Business Meeting of September 24th, 2024. Eric, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could we start with a roll call, please?
Westwood.
Here.
Conley. Here. Daniels. Keys. Present. Miller. Ronnie. Here. Cuban.
Here.
All right, thank you. Just as a comment for the public, as well as those on council who may not be aware, we do have a couple of members out, like Lucas of the Pizarrington, so just that or the dreaded gumbo. I didn't check which.
The dreaded gumbo?
The dreaded gumbo. That's Lucas of the Pizarrington. That's what my dad always said when he wasn't feeling well. So we've got two folks that are out, and we appreciate them not coming and sharing what they have with us. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented, with a reminder that we do have 4 folks here, so if there's anything that anybody wants to amend based on the fact that we're missing a couple people, now would be a lovely time to do that. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Conley and a second from Councilmember Keys.
Commissioner Shinta, she's always a second.
Yeah.
I know, I'm missing my second.
Is there any discussion on the adoption of the agenda?
Under action items, I would like to table, which resolution was that?
3660.
Yeah, 3660 till next meeting.
Okay, so, there's a motion, do you want to do that now, or do it at the time? Either way is fine.
I figured do it now, get it out of the way.
All right, there's a motion to table resolution 3660 from the agenda till next week. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, any discussion on the issue?
The only thing is, we had a discussion today at our land use and planning meeting, and felt that there needed to be one more change to the events application. So we want to table that before it can be presented to the public before taking action.
Okay, sounds good. Any other discussion?
Nope.
All right, any other, well, first off, let's close that motion out. Hearing no discussion, let's do a roll call vote on the motion to table 3660 until the next meeting, which will be, date certain is?
October, please hold.
Thank you.
October 8th.
October 8th?
Yeah.
October 8th.
The day after my birthday.
All right. It's whose?
The day after my birthday.
Oh, there you go. You'll be older next time.
I will, I'll be officially old.
All right. All right, I'm sorry. Roll call on the motion, on the motion to amend.
Conley.
Yes.
Keys.
Yes.
Ronnie. Yes. Cuban.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Any other motions before adopting the agenda? All right, roll call on the original motion to adopt the agenda.
Conley.
Yes.
Keys.
Yes.
Ronnie. Yes. Cuban.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll proceed with the agenda as written with that one modification. First off, mayor's, sorry, did I hear something? Okay. So I mentioned that we have 2 members out. I'm teaching this week through tomorrow, so I'm a little bit further behind than normal on my email this week. We have closed our posting for the assistant planner. We opened that up and posted in a couple of other different places and got a much larger audience. So Lonnie and Brian are going through those applications now and narrowing it down. And then we are in the process of scheduling interviews for next week. It'll be Lonnie, Brian, and Al from the planning board, and if Al has a conflict, then Jeff will be coming in his place. And so they'll be interviewing that person. That'll be the person who's running a lot of our evening meetings, the on-site presence for the planning board, and kind of doing that stuff that Courtney used to do, and James before her, and Peter Italiano before that. So not going to be a planner, but all of the administrative stuff that kind of goes along with that. Also sign permits and a lot of the stuff that Brian has been helping us out from a process-wise. So hopefully, we'll have an announcement to make on that in the near future. Next week is the municipal conference in West Yellowstone, so I am planning on going to that. My focus, and I will certainly, if anybody wants to go online and look at what those agendas are and kind of call out some, and by the way, if your schedules permit, they were kind of late posting it this year, and the rooms had disappeared all but completely, and so I'm actually staying in Island Park and driving over because it's less expensive. I'm attending a couple ones that I've highlighted that have to do with price-protected housing, basically that workforce housing, but fixed, that's not just going to become short-term rentals. And then also attending a couple of sessions to help finalize that open staff position we have, so that we can have a full-time person who's paid to do a lot of these tasks and hopefully help us shorten the turnaround time on some of these projects.
Is that gonna be online? I think it already is.
That, when you say, is that going to be online, you're talking about a position, you're talking about the conference?
The conference.
The conference is not. However, on October 26th, there will be an online council training session that's put on by Libby. That one is free. That one was scheduled for earlier and then it got postponed. But the public is welcome to attend it as well, as are all the council members. Okay, so that's going to be our October 26th. Other projects going on, I've not heard any word back from Mr. Fitzgerald on what the school board's response was, if they were ready to move forward with an SRO officer yet. We had a meeting last week on the incomplete floodplain permits. So we have a total of, I want to say, 33 incomplete permits and 13 additional that had been identified that were so incomplete they hadn't even been started yet. And so WWC is working us through that. He's reached out and handling all of those. Brian's able to help by looking through the archives. We met with FEMA on Thursday, and that meeting went as well as it could when you have 46 permits that need some help. For those in the public who may have been on the receiving end of some of those, there's a lot of implications to that, not the least of which is if we don't get those closed out, FEMA can take away our standing in the NFIP, the flood program, which means people in the community would not be able to buy flood insurance because it didn't have the FEMA backing. And that means that banks could call their notes due and say, pay up or it's ours. There's potential to fine us. There's potential to request that we write some very large checks to give back money that they have given us. So that's a very, very high priority item to get taken care of. Having said that, their goal is compliance, not to be punitive, and we were able to demonstrate very clearly that we are making gargantuan efforts to help get that done. So if you hear folks who ask about that, that should help you prepare to answer those questions, and you're certainly welcome to refer them to me. Any questions on the FEMA permits from the table? All right. Also last Thursday, we had the downtown master plan. I know a lot of you made that. This is basically an addendum to the growth policy that focuses on downtown. We did do it on Zoom. There wasn't a lot of people who joined. In fact, I think I'm aware of only one that joined in the morning session. But what it did mean is that we were able to record them, providing people were talking into the mics. I have not seen those posted yet, but we're still also recovering from having a lot of staff out of the office last week. So I don't know what the status is, but as soon as I can confirm that we have those recordings and they're good, we'll get those available online, and they're off the front news page. There's a tab that basically says, here's the downtown master plan. While we're on that news tab, there's also a news link for the stormwater project that has the updated timeframes and kind of progress reports. So if people are curious, to see what's happening. That's the latest information that we update regularly, and it still changes and is out of date 10 minutes later. So we will do our best to keep folks posted, but we are making good progress. There's a couple of things that have come up that have slowed us down, but right now the progress is good. Those of you in Public Works, did we get any reports of delays, or we're back on schedule and still as expected?
Tight schedule.
Tight schedule is what I understood, so we're good.
Lots of calls from that half of town, from this half of town.
From,
Just questions.
they're just not
Curious.
used to having construction on their side.
Yeah.
Just curiosity, just curiosity.
Are we gonna get pretty pavement to cover it up like the other side of town did? So, and we're eagerly awaiting, getting the pavement in, particularly across Broadway, just because I'm sure you've noticed, those rocks kick up, even if we come by and sweep it. You know, an hour later, it looks bad again. So I could give you a date, it would not be off by more than a month in either direction. So, we'll keep you posted on that. Also, on that news tab, while we're talking about things on the news tab, October 4th is going to be our annual fall cleanup. That sounds really far away. That's next week, okay? So that's 8 to 3 at the recycling center unless they get filled up earlier. And for the public, there are some items that are not accepted, appliances with Freon, tires, anything that's a hazardous material, that won't be there. Other than that, it'll operate as it has in the past. They take a lot of stuff that isn't normally taken from that. All right, stormwater Tetra Tech. Still working with Tetra Tech. No additional information on Rocky Fork, including the go-ahead to go, but they promised us by the end of the month, so that's getting very close. So hopefully we can start moving on that very, very soon, but I haven't got any updates to report on that. Working with Chief Schrock on finalizing the plans for the vehicle feedback signs, so we can have the permanent ones in. We have the temporary one up. Batteries died, being recharged, so that's just something that's kind of an interruption in it, but we're working on getting the permanent ones in. Also, while I'm out, I'll be working to finalize that airport paperwork. I apologize again, but we've gotten other bigger, more crucial stuff kind of done, and so I hope to be able to finalize that next week and have that to bring to our next meeting to discuss. And Jody's gonna say, Dave, this is exactly the thing we wrote down 3 months ago, and it's like, yep, it's just sitting on the back stack while we deal with other more immediate things that need to come up. The only other thing that's worth sharing with this council is as we approve large events, we mentioned those to this council. The Renaissance Fair has applied again for next year. It has not yet been approved. We've had a couple of different meetings and continuing to have some meetings with them regarding traffic concerns and parking concerns. So our leverage is before we issue that permit. And so those conversations are taking place. They're going to have dedicated hired staff to help make sure we don't have the problems, and they're also working on identifying all sorts of additional parking areas other than just right there at the Renaissance. And quite frankly, I think if we work with the airport board, that we could use a lot of parking over at the airport too, and then they have a shuttle to run it across there. So there's a lot of possibilities that are out there.
Yeah.
We had talked at the last meeting about having a resolution to dissolve the pool committee at this meeting. That resolution did not get written and run past the attorney, so you'll notice that's not on the agenda. We're still doing that. When that resolution is ready, I've asked Al to come do a presentation, just kind of a final report of what those committees were able to accomplish. But it's appropriate to do that report at the time that we're taking the action on it. So that's why that's not on the agenda. Okay. Thank you. I think that's everything that I had scribbled down, and I'm not forgetting about it at the moment. Is there any questions of anything that I did not bring up that council would like to ask about? All right. With that, let's go ahead and open public comment for things on the agenda. Having said that, as we go through and hit individual action items, particularly you'll notice that one of our action items is a public hearing. I will go ahead and open, the meeting on a per item basis at that time, because that is when people are going to want to maybe put in comments, is when it's in the proximity of what we're doing. I have the timer for 3 minutes. If you stand at the podium, loudly state your name, and where you're from, general vicinity, and then, you've got 3 minutes if you'd address the chair. Everybody else will eavesdrop while you're talking to me. Just a reminder, that's not a Q&A session, it's your opportunity to be heard, and for us to hear you. So, with that, I'll go ahead and open up the public comment on the agenda. And then also, like I said, there's also one at the end of the agenda that's just general public comment on anything you'd like. Public comment is open. I'll look to the room. Seeing nobody leaping to the forefront in the room, I'll go to online. If you're online and would like to make a public comment on the agenda, please turn on your camera or flip off your mute so that we can see. Going twice, and 3 times, we will go ahead and close that block of public comment on the agenda. Up for action, I will entertain a motion for the second reading of ordinance 960. After we officially get that on the agenda, then I will open it up for a public hearing. But at this time, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve ordinance number 960 first amended, an ordinance of the city of Red Lodge, Montana to repeal and replace ordinance 928, 928A, 151 amendment, the municipal code pertaining to event permits and regulations for the use of city-owned property as governed in Title 8, Chapter 8, use of city-owned property.
And I'll second that.
Second reading.
All right, I have a motion, and I have a second. I have a motion from Councilmember Tupin, a second from Councilmember Conley. Any discussion at the table first before I open up the public hearing?
Just for a little context, there were very minimal changes to this ordinance. Specifically, one sentence that has been reviewed by the attorney that just says that the forms would be approved by, or the fees on the forms would be approved by, the forms would be approved by resolution of the city, and then there may be additional information as requested, not required.
All right, and the logic behind that was, there was a whole bunch of fields, some of which were appropriate for large events, some of them were for small events, and this allows you to pick and choose.
Correct.
And then adopt per resolution. All right, and because this is an ordinance, there will be a public hearing on the matter, so I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. This is specifically pertaining to ordinance 960. Public hearing is open. Going to the room. Going to online. Twice and 3 times. Thank you for keeping it official. Go ahead and close the public hearing. Any further discussion before we take a vote?
The changes were so minor, but they were needed.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the table? Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Conley?
Yeah.
Steve?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right. I will entertain a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the Public Works Union contract.
I will make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the Public Works Union contract.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Tupin, and we'll give this second to Councilmember Ronnie. All right. Any other discussion on the matter at the board, at the table? All right. So we reviewed this last time. The version that was in the packet this time does not have the markup shown. It's the clean copy for recording. But last week we had all of the markup copies that are there. I do think that it's worth noting that I think the next time around, what we'll do is we'll probably start, there's so much duplication and kind of conflicting stuff in here. I think it should probably be about half the size, but we didn't do that this time. Maybe as we get that additional staff person, we'll be able to narrow that down.
That person's gonna be really busy.
Pardon?
That person's gonna be really busy.
I hope so.
Giving him more and more stuff.
So we're just authorizing you to sign this, we're not approving of it.
So in authorizing me to assign, yeah, so So if you aren't making modification or edits to the contract, you're authorizing me to sign it as is. If people are not happy with it, they could certainly refrain from authorizing me to sign it. And given that there are only 4 of us, that would be enough, and it requires 4 votes to pass. That means that for everything we discussed today, everybody here has a de facto veto power. Ooh, the power. So did I understand the question properly, and did I answer it?
You did.
All right. So, any further discussion? All right, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Conley?
Yeah.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes. Tupin?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I wanted to argue the point.
I know, I can tell.
The most, well, and you can make discussions too, so that's what that's for. All right, next, I will entertain a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the police union contract.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the police union contract.
And actually, can I
It's an
modify
MOU.
that?
I'm sorry, contract MOU.
Thank you. So I have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the MOU with the police union. I'm going to get rid of contract in there. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion from Councilmember Ronning, second from Councilmember Tupin, right?
That's mine.
All right, any discussion?
Why are you looking at me?
I'm
waiting for you.
I'm starting on both sides. So the police contract, the only thing that was up for discussion on a yearly basis was the pay. We kind of took a sideways step. We didn't really talk about pay. Their original request or proposal, or however you'd like to phrase it, was for a $1 raise. Again, we did a study and looked at neighboring cities, found that our wages were appropriate, but we also said we want them to stay that way. So what we countered with was to change the COLA to match the same thing that we did with the other public works union, which is change those bookends from 1% to 3% to instead be 1% to 4%. So hopefully, if inflation goes down, then that won't really impact us at all. But if inflation goes high, we top out at 4% as opposed to 3%. And then that contract will ultimately be up again in the future as well. They're not necessarily on the same cycle. But that will be the full contract, not just dollars. Any other questions that I can answer? All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Conley?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes. Tupin?
Yes.
Thank you, the motion passes. All right, item number D, we are passing over. That was resolution 3660. We are instead moving on to resolution number 3430. And I have this on my agenda for discussion only. Is it discussion or is this for action? And because it says discussion, should we?
I say we keep it as discussion and take it to the next meeting for action, just because I think it's only fair for the public to know if something's getting passed on the table.
I agree with that. I apologize for not catching that earlier. Okay, so do we want to discuss that now, or do we want to move that down to the land use and planning?
That would be
Which-
land use and planning. I have no issue discussing it now. It's very
Okay.
light discussion.
Go ahead.
Okay, so essentially what resolution 3430 does is it is just adding or creating a fee schedule that adds our event fees on there and any land use fees, as well as changes our temporary use fees, to be more aligned with what the actual needs of the city are, and then also keep it very cohesive and very easy for people to access that information. So that, we received the fee schedule from Brian this past week, and it should be in our agenda package. And for review, if anyone has any question on it, we will take action on that next week.
All right, and I don't think we need a motion to table that and move it forward, because we're just making an administrative decision that because we didn't call it action, we're not going to take action.
Is it under
All right.
the city-owned land use? Is that where those fees are? Okay. Thank you.
All right, I will entertain a motion for ordinance number 911.
I will make a motion for ordinance 911, second amended, camping on city-owned land, public hearing, first reading.
All right.
Second that motion.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Tupin, a second from Councilmember Conley. This being an ordinance, there will be a public hearing that I will open up. But before we go to that public hearing, let's have some discussion at the table to inform the public so they know what they may want to comment on.
So essentially, ordinance 911, this was originally written just to clarify that for camping on public land, the original ordinance had a mention of commercial lands, so it didn't really fit within the ordinance, so we removed that. We also just cleaned up some language saying the city may provide an exception for overnight camping for permitted events approved by the city. Just, again, cleaning up some language, making it more legible, easier to understand, as well as accurate, and less room for, what's that?
Interpretation?
Thank you. So those were the changes that we made to it. This currently does still have it read that no person shall camp in, take in, or occupy or camp on public right-of-way or public land. We did have discussions of maybe allowing that in the future, but that would become a larger discussion, and for now, we felt it was important to make this ordinance correct.
So from my understanding and that of the public, just to clarify, camping on private land, there are no city-imposed restrictions.
Correct.
Camping on city-owned land, be it right-of-way or other city-owned property, is not allowed at this time, with the exception of if it is part of a permitted event.
Correct. That has been approved.
All right. Any other discussion from the table?
So just to clarify, so for example, the bike events that they do where they stage everything over by the Wildlife Center, they could potentially have people camp in their vans the night before, or if it's in their.
If it's in their application and.
Their
yeah,
application,
and they
okay.
get permit, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you guys really cut this, I remember working on this last year, it was super long, and yeah, I like how you just made it so clean and easy.
Clean
Good
and
job.
All right. Any other comment from the table before I go to public hearing? All right, with that background and information, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing for ordinance number 911, Second Amendment for camping on city-owned land. I'll open it at this time, and I'll look first to the room. Seeing nothing, I'll look to online. If there's anyone online who'd like to make a comment during the public hearing in regards to ordinance 911, Second Amended, please turn on your camera or come off mute so that we can see you. Going twice, seeing nothing, hearing nothing. And 3 times, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. That was just once. I just not hitting it very hard. I need to do it the other direction so I can control it a little better maybe. All right, any other further discussion at the table?
The only other thing I wanted to mention is there was one person who had question of whose responsibility it would be to enforce this, and it is written in this ordinance that enforcement of this section is the responsibility of the Red Lodge Police Department, and they are aware that that is their job.
All right,
And there are fines attached.
There are penalties for noncompliance.
and I'm aware that they have issued warnings and citations for it as it currently stands, so, all right.
Can I just ask one more question?
Absolutely.
So if you have your camper parked there, but you're not using it, that is a different.
Correct.
Thing,
If
okay.
you can have a car, you can have a camper, van, motorhome parked there, but you cannot occupy that.
Okay. Gotcha, thank you.
And you definitely can't snore.
Oh, yeah?
You go in and check and make sure the crackers are fresh, but no snoring allowed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, last call for questions from the table. All right, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Conley?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Browning? Yes. Tupin?
Yes.
All right, the first reading passes, being an ordinance that will come before the council a second time and public hearing yet again. All right, I will entertain a resolution I will entertain a motion for resolution 3662, the Northwest Energy Utility Easement.
I move to approve resolution number 3662, the Northwestern Energy Utility Easement.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Ronning and a second from
You're doing everything, don't you?
from Councilmember Keys. So I will start the discussion just a little bit. We brought this up last time. We had the big copies, which I still have. I'm sorry, let me not confuse the two. We have two different easements. So this is Northwest Energy. This is basically a blanket easement at the airport that says they have the right to do utilities once they have coordinated and received directions from the airport board, of which the city currently has 2 members on that board. And we look to expand that in the future. But they basically get coordination from the airport board to make sure that they're building or putting utilities in a way that's conducive with potential future hangars. And at the last meeting, we had it up for discussion, and it was directed by the council. Let's go ahead and put them on for action at this meeting. So that's why they're here. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, let's have a roll call vote.
Conley?
Yes.
Keys?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes. Tupin?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. I will entertain a motion for resolution number 3663. This one is for Beartooth Electric Utility Easement.
I move to approve resolution number 3663, Beartooth Electric Utility Easement.
And I would second that.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ronning, a second from Councilmember Conley. Discussion from the table, and if it pleases the council, I'll go ahead and introduce this one as well. This is the one that we had last time, that is the big green one, and it has, basically it's replacing some overhead lines with underground lines, including across the pasture piece up there that is currently rented out, and that we will soon be running an RFP for and having a new contract in place for that, as it was deemed that the one that was there was insufficient. So again, there's a smaller version. By the time you take a legal page and turn it on to a letter page so that it fits easily in the packet, it goes at 84%. So I apologize for the small print, but no, you can just zoom it out and it'll be bigger. Questions or comments on that? Hearing no questions at the table, roll call vote, please.
Conley?
Yes.
Keys?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. We are done with a very long business agenda in 30 minutes. When those two get back, we need to let them know they're taking up a lot of time at our council meeting, because without them, it just flies. All
Well,
right,
I feel like we also spent a lot of time on these, and we made sure to do it right, so that way it's easy to get these.
Most of these are second readings, so.
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the advantage of seeing everything in advance. With that in mind, let's move to the work session portion of our agenda. So this is where the standing committees present things that they will be bringing forth to the council, and including about whether they want to see it up for action at the next meeting. So, Council Chair Conley from Public Health and Safety, do you want to lead with a brief update of the relative things that the entire council needs to know?
Yes, the chief of police couldn't be with us today. He was busy doing police work. But we did have a suggestion, for that. There's a stop sign at Fifth and Hauser that people either run through, roll through, or actually stop. And there was the, question whether or not we could have Public Works paint some lines there, like what happened over on, 8th and Word, and that those really draw people's attention to it. So that was kind of one of the suggestions. And the bulk of the time was spent on how resort tax is used and whether or not in the future it could help pull money out of the general fund and be covered by resort tax. But the way it looks is that whatever it doesn't cover and the resort tax won't cover, then that will end up coming out of general fund anyway. So it doesn't matter which fund it's coming out of, it works the same way. So we've kind of figured out that resort tax isn't going to help us with our public safety shortfall.
And the only other ways that we can look at this is, of course, annexing into the Red Lodge Rural Fire Department, which would raise everyone's taxes. Or we could have a public safety mill levy, which would also raise taxes. So somewhere down the line, we're going to have a 5-year forecast on our budget to figure out what kind of shortfall we're going to have and where we can cut or make up. The other thing is, I did do a quick report on the downtown plan forum, and it looks like the top 4 things, 3 sessions, top 4 things is to keep the historic downtown looking historic, that we maintain the walkability, sidewalks are improved. So this is, even though the city has that in plan, it was one of the things that came up often. And they really like the small independent storefronts. So those were the top ones in almost every session. So it was very interesting.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
So for action items, what I will do is I will direct, the chief of police and our public works director to review, the stop sign at Fifth and Hagen and make it.
Hauser.
Fifth and Hauser, I'm sorry, my writing is R's and N's. And have them consider paint lines to see if that's something that they agree would make sense there. I also have a similar report, for the speed sign on Northward right off of the freeway, that we may still need to trim some trees around it or consider, moving that from the neighbors in that area. I will add, a lot of additional positive feedback on the stop sign on Northward and those lines that are there. So those are 2 actions that I will, delegate to our public works director, and I'll let you know.
Just a
Yes.
little quick comment on the new stop signs on Word. I did have someone mention to me that there was still the yield sign, which got to be very confusing for the folks that were all at the intersection.
So there's stop signs in one direction and
And
yields on the other
Yeah.
side?
Yeah,
That's at a different intersection, I think. It's just
And-
when they're all jumbled together.
I think it's, that's Fifth, I don't think it's Fifth and Word, it's,
Okay.
8th and Word. I'm
So
not,
I'm gonna add to that list,
just a double check.
review Northward, stop signs, yield signs. So to my knowledge, it's okay to have stop signs and yields,
Yeah,
at
I
the
think
same
it was more so
intersection,
the
but.
yield folks were confused because they were yielding and then the people were stopped, and so it might just be a learning curve, but I think it's only a 3-way,
Why would you?
so why would you need the yield if you have 2 stops?
The yields are coming on the opposite
Right.
direction.
Yeah, just if it's 4 rows, but if it's only 3. So I will add that to the list of things to look at, and we'll get an update. We'll have them do that at either Public Works or Public Health and Safety. We'll get an update meeting.
And we did receive an email on our lovely speed sign at the south end of town that the batteries are dead yet again.
Yeah, those, they were being charged, and I didn't get a chance to drive by that today to see if they were replaced, but I know they were being charged yesterday.
I didn't see the sign out today.
Okay. I will follow up with that. I am aware at a very high level of, the chief's workload, and I know that he's dealing with some things, and so all of this is prioritized, in order.
So can I make, add some additional information
Okay.
to the resort tax? We had a resort tax, the reason why this came up is we had a resort tax meeting, and we specifically asked the resort tax committee if we could, if they felt, if they would support, putting it back to the voters to see if we could use resort tax funds to pay, for our public safety, not just the capital, but actually to pay for salaries and, or to pay for the fire department contract that we have. And I was instructed by them, it was a unanimous vote, to come back to council and say, last year's expenditures are right here. What are you gonna cut out of this $1 million worth of expenses that we spend every year? Because it has to come out of something here. So it would either have to come out, we have $100,000 for water, $150,000 for sewer. If we take that out, then our water and sewer bills are going to go up. we have our pool, $98,000 every year. And we have our streets, O&M, our streets budget is our resort tax. So are we going to continuously have potholes in our streets because you're going to take that away to pay for public safety? Our pool maintenance and, salaries is $152,000. Our parks, budget is at $85,000. So that's $1 million that we spend on those, plus, our property tax relief is required by law to spend. And last year, we brought in $1.37 million, and we spent $1 million of it. So they're just saying that they don't feel that there's enough funds in the resort tax to pick up that $300,000 for public safety. And so we would, as a council, have to decide, what are you gonna cut out of this budget so that you can pay for public safety?
May I add a little to that?
Yes.
So I had a chance to sit on that meeting also. One of the comments that was very key as we've looked at using the resort tax, one of the comments that was made, and I think there's validity to it, is when this was presented to the public to have this resort tax was for the polish. It was to give us a boost, to give us things over and above what other towns had. And it was pointed out that to an extent, particularly if you look at what we're paying into our water and our sewer, which is some pretty large regular commitments, that in essence what we're doing, we are easing fees and taxes, but what we're doing is we're maybe charging less for some services or less taxes than what we really ought to be doing. Look at the intent when the public voted and signed off on this. The thinking was not, we're going to use this to eliminate our cost of providing basic services, which is the approach that West Yellowstone does, but instead, this wasn't intended to be part of our operating capital of the city. It was supposed to be the stuff that made Red Lodge a little bit nicer. So that was part of their resistance to push back, is this isn't a slush fund to not charge an appropriate amount for water, to not charge. Now, all of those things, if that was not coming out of resort tax, water rates and sewer rates would go up. But there was a philosophical discussion of, is that the right answer, right? Are we using those resort taxes? And those were specific things that when they passed the resort tax, they talked about. But they had a discussion about, don't look at resort tax as paying for the necessities. Look at the resort tax as what makes Red Lodge a little bit nicer than places that don't have a resort tax.
So at the end of the day, they voted on, they do not recommend changing the resort, or asking the voters to change the resort tax to start paying for services that the city provides for public safety.
But if you do, then you should simultaneously come to them and say, and here's what we're gonna trade in exchange for it.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, we had a nice little, reserve in resort tax, so we were able to purchase a vac truck. And because we were able to pay cash for that, we saved the city $100,000. Because so you also have to think, if we don't have that reserve anymore, every capital project we buy, we're gonna end up financing it. And that's gonna cost the city more in the long run as well. So that's, and it was good. It was a hard meeting, but it was good. So public health and safety then is going to be looking at council to tell us, how do you want us to proceed? As far as trying to, obviously, number one, we can either, revisit the fire department contract, or we can, number two would be to look at the petition to annex Red Lodge into Red Lodge Rural Fire Department, so the city's not paying for the fire protection that we're required by law, because we would now be part of Red Lodge Rural Fire Department. And it would be
required by law, unless it's provided via another mechanism.
Right. And the other one would be an actual public safety district, to actually ask the voters to approve so many mills for public safety. So we will, to me, that we need to have some type of resolution, I think, moving forward on, like, which one do you want us to proceed with? I don't know how, any other suggestions on,
No, I mean, that seems like reasonable. It might be nice to have, you guys have done a ton of work on this. I know that. We've had a ton of information come in. You've looked at a bunch of different options. We've had a lot of different voices speak on it as well. I think that having the pros and cons of each of those kind of in a presentation format might be the best route, to where we can see the big overview, see what those pros and cons are, and get the public to weigh in on it specifically, I think would be important. Because end of the day, this is gonna be an effect of how their tax dollars are spent, how they might be taxed more in a different facet, and I think it's only fair that that kind of presentation can be made available to the public, and I know that that's hard, communicating things from this room to out there, doesn't.
And just so the people online know, and the people in the room, our general fund is currently being spent 100% on public safety between the fire department and the police department.
Pretty darn close anyway, not quite
Pretty darn
100%,
It's,
but
it's really
it's
close,
really close.
And it's what? Tax, and then that's our property tax dollars, I'm sorry. Yeah, that we
That's
collect
all
in
we're gonna
property
get
tax
worse.
is all, basically all going right now, so.
All right. So I did write down, I didn't mention it as we were doing those action items, but I did write down that 5-year forecast on budget, which is part of that budget project slideshow presentation that I'm working on about
Yeah.
how do we communicate that. And it's interesting how that tweaks a little bit each week and with each discussion with each, so that is still coming. A lot of those approaches to fix it that you mentioned are actually the taxpayers' hands, not our hands. So
Right,
for
right.
instance, to raise
So we have to
taxes,
ask
that
for it.
requires the taxpayers to approve that.
So we have to ask for it.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different, most of the things that raise money, go to the taxpayers. So.
Yeah.
And then there was a good share of that conversation that actually, fits into the admin and finance and maybe land use and planning. So that's okay, we just gotta jump on it, we won't have to visit it there. Anything else from public health and safety?
Nope, that about covers it.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go to admin and finance, and I'll look to standing committee chair Ronning.
Yes, so at our meeting today, we, continue to review and tweak our short-term rental good neighbor guest guidelines. This was a part of the original short-term rental ordinance, but it was never, presented or approved by council. So, we had a draft that was written last year, and we have been going through and tweaking it. And, hopefully, we will have that to council, it'll probably be the last meeting in October, because we need one more meeting to go over and make sure we have everything the way that we wanted, and have, Dennison give us the okay that we're not saying anything we shouldn't say, and
How's that gonna be used?
it will be online, and it will be part of the packet that,
It may send out to,
that.
And it'll actually be required to be posted in all the properties.
Yes.
and we will
It-
we will get feedback too from, companies like yours and.
I provided
It will,
some-
but probably the
Yeah,
most significant guidance we got was from the city attorney, who said that as a city document, it should only reference things that are guided by, so while some of the stuff was, it'd be nice if, and here's how to be a sweet neighbor, those elements we will leave to the property management companies to include on their kind of accompanying form, but this will be limited to just things that are based in resolutions and ordinances.
And for the online version, we will have the ordinance numbers, hyperlinks there, so if they don't believe us, they can go out to the ordinance and read it.
No
So-
fireworks.
Yeah, I know,
For
yes,
real.
yes, for real, yes. So we'll hopefully have that up for, a resolution, to adopt that, the last meeting in October.
So I heard conflicting things. So will it be for discussion next time then? Or are you gonna discuss it internally and then bring it to council the last meeting in October just to discuss it the first time?
I don't know that we'll be ready for, it won't, no. It'll be discussed in the last meeting in October,
Okay,
and then
so,
have the.
okay, that's what I wrote down the
Thank
first
you.
time, so, and then,
Yes,
so then
sorry,
action
yes.
in November.
Yes, action in November.
Okay.
And then we are also working on our annual review of the short-term rentals, just, We have gotten the numbers from Janae, and just so everyone knows, with the increase in building that's happened, and the stabilization in the number of vacation rentals coming online, we are just under 11% for the threshold. So we have, it has stabilized. So there is no fear right now that we're anywhere near that threshold. You know, we have no crystal ball to know if we're going to have another COVID event or what have you, but right now, we are.
Does that constitute your short-term rental report, or is that something that's still coming, and will
It's
it
still
be ready
coming,
next
yeah.
time, or?
It will not. We have to, we're gonna
do
do
November on that one.
Yeah,
too.
let's do November, yeah.
That's gonna take, we're gonna put together a presentation with some,
Slides.
you know,
We're
where
gonna
we
make it
were, where
look
we
pretty,
are.
Yeah, but I just know everyone was really curious about that. And we're also going to, you know, have in there, the number of calls that have hit the hotline, what types of complaints people have been, you know, what types of complaints have been happening, you know, and, you know, just a lot of how much resort tax is coming in, what different categories, numbers, you know, all of that good stuff will all be included in that, so stay tuned for that. And-
If I'm hearing that right, then, is there any changes to ordinances? You'd listed ordinance 96, is there going to be changes in addition to the presentation?
There are, but I wanna
Okay.
get the annual review finished. And the background, we are still working on our business registration ordinance 906 and our short-term rental ordinance 963, because they contradict each other in several different places, and 963 has not been codified, so we need to make sure that is done. And that will probably be happening hopefully in November as well.
Or at least the first presentation of it?
Yeah.
To get it moving there. All
I'd
right.
like to get it done by the end of the year, but I don't know if we'll be able to, because it'll be 2 readings, right? So,
Yep, if it's an ordinance, yes.
so.
I appreciate you taking the time to do it right, though, so we don't
Yeah.
end up with conflicting.
Redoing it again.
Yeah.
Yes,
Better, slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
yes.
All right. Anything else?
No, I,
Any
Chris,
other,
anything else that I don't
any
know?
other questions from the Admin and Finance Committee, from those not on it? All right, next we'll go to Committee Chair Tupin for Land Use and Planning.
Yeah, so, land use and planning, first off, the discussion, there is a resolution of intent to evaluate a land exchange. Specifically speaking of a chunk of land at the top of Brewery Hill that is kind of surrounded, by kind of, I mean it is surrounded by city space. Part of that exchange would be with the intent to potentially develop, fixed price or, protected price, workforce housing or affordable housing at the top of the hill. In return, the owner would be able to get a bit that connects to his current land as well. So there is that resolution of intent. We are still waiting on a resolution number on that, from what I see.
Yeah, so basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna wait and put a number on that once council says, yes, let's move forward. So basically, we've had some just generic conversations on it. This is formalizing the, yes, let's move forward with all of the actions that are there. To take that action forward, it actually requires just like it did with the Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary, it basically is a blessing of council to go ahead and do that.
So the only discussion I have on that for the table is, one, I'm in support. I think that's a fantastic idea, and if the landowner is, interested in this, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for both parties, which is how that should work. The one thing I would mention on that is just from having previous discussions with that particular landowner, I do want to say that if for some reason this doesn't work, or if this wasn't something that he wanted to do, he did make mention at one point to me of doing a land swap for some property that he has that would connect the trail system up top to the 8th Street section in town, or just basically to 8th Street. I would like to see that not lose sight or get dismissed. I would love to leave that on the table. So that's my only request there, and I think that, you know, it'll be really interesting to hear how some of these conversations come out. I would also like to extend myself as I would love to be able to be a part of these conversations if I could be in any help which way or another.
Is there a possibility you could include that in this?
So,
So, I mean, I know it has to be value to value. I don't know how
And so-
valuable land
And
is
again, I
on a
don't want
hillside.
to lose one opportunity for
Right.
another.
no,
Yeah.
so,
But I also don't want to make it forced where it has to be both.
Right.
no, so what'll happen is, so when this originally came forth, the owner did come forth and express that he was interested in sharing basically an end cut of his trail, in exchange for the land. And one of the initial things, if you go through and you look at the requirements, you remember, because we've been through this process before, that in our fiduciary role to the public, the city has to come out equal or better on this deal.
Right,
The city's not allowed to go in the hole.
Mhm.
So when this originally came up with the trail conversation, there were two additional pieces of information of why we didn't pursue that at that time. The first was that land on a hill with a significant slope does not compare equal to value to developable land on a land flat next to a major highway. So that was one of the concerns, was just the value exchange. The secondary thing that came into place is the Brewery Hill Trail came up, which is actually a more preferred option in general terms as we talk to the trails folks. And that doesn't mean that other trails aren't there. And so we had approached that landowner about changing it for that piece of property, which gives us a bigger block of land there. His initial response was, yes, that's great, make it happen. He came back a little while later and said, no, let's go back to talking about the trail site again. And so, it kind of just sat on ice for a little bit. And he came back and said, nope, I'm ready to talk about that other piece, which is a benefit to the city. So if we were to look at doing the others, that would actually be a separate resolution. We're looking at trading X for Z now instead of X for Y.
Great. So the
And
big
so-
thing I mention it is, again, I just don't want to see one get pursued and then the opportunity for another potentially go to the wayside and that's, all end up shorthanded.
I hope it goes to the wayside because this one is successful.
And that is A-okay in my book. Again, I don't want to lose one opportunity, or honestly, I don't want to lose two opportunities in the pursuit of one.
Right.
That's my only comment I had for that. But otherwise, definitely in support. So,
All right, go ahead, Councilmember Keys, that looked like you were about to ask or say.
Yeah, I have a question. If it turns out that the land value is not equal, 0.52 acres versus the 1.09 acres, is there a precedent for, doing the exchange plus cash? Does that ever happen? Or is it just a complete one-for-one exchange?
I think what you do is you come back and you go with, I think you have to figure out how to do it so that it balances out. Now, the biggest problem that we have here, or the biggest reason I think it's going to work, if you look at the map that was included in the packet, while the piece that party is interested is a little over an acre as compared to the half acre that the city has an interest in, the usable portion of that 1+ acre is about a half acre. So you have a half acre usable in both cases. One of them just comes with some free extra lawn that you can't do anything with because there's utilities underneath it. So there's an easement that's there.
and then wouldn't it be fair to say that that smaller section would add value to city-owned land, which may in return increase that particular value of that spot?
In my thinking, it does. One of the developers we've talked to about developing that has indicated that they can work around that, and so it's not a problem. However, I picture up, and so I think it's wise to include that as a single block, and that's why we're pursuing that.
Yep.
With council's blessing, that's why we're pursuing that,
Perfect. Yep, okay, that makes more sense.
okay? All right, so is council okay if we add a resolution to that and bring that for action at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just the intent is that, just to be clear, that would be, potential affordable housing.
That's what the goal with that land up there is. We're looking at it being, it's city-owned land. We're looking at how do we put that as our city stake to get that price-protected housing. So specifically, Section 42, Title 8, something that is guaranteed for those Main Street workers, or it's a 30 to 60% AMI is what most of the plans we're looking at.
Would it make sense
Covered
to
for.
to add that as a whereas in that resolution?
All we're doing,
This is just a,
Just
this
again,
is
just
just to go
asking the
look
question,
into it.
learning,
Yeah.
that's a learning question more than
Yeah,
anything.
no, that's okay. So the idea is just a template till we look into it.
Okay.
Is that fair? When we get done and we do that, we're gonna move forward, I would say that would definitely be an appropriate, whereas we can
Perfect.
use it for this purpose,
Perfect. Okay.
whereas
Yep.
then we can do it there.
Excellent, that all tracks to me.
yeah, that will be a different resolution.
Yep, perfect. Just wanna make, again, learning questions.
So we're moving that forward, and also, we're moving 3430 forward to the next meeting
Correct.
for action too, because we have
Yep.
that. So those are the two that I have from public, or from land use for action next time.
Correct.
Is there anything else?
The only comment on 34, oh gosh, I lost my brain, but,
30.
for 3430 is the reason why we did it, and again, briefly touched on it, but specifically there was discussion on what happens for large recurring events and making sure that they have that opportunity to continue to use that space and plan ahead and build, and for things like the 4th of July, for things like their
The Renaissance Festival.
the fun run, all of these things where they're not getting elbowed out by smaller events or things that are not as established. So it just is kind of a protection for longevity of events for our community. So that was the pivot there on that discussion. And Brian has already made the notes, and they're completed, so we'll have that ready to roll for the exhibits for next week,
All right.
the next session.
Any other questions for land use and planning from the rest of council? All right. Public Works, and while we have Public Works, let me start. We have, a member of Public Works on the phone. So there's two items that we have discussion that we'd like to have for action next time. It's FEMA bank stabilization, and there's actually two different resolutions there. And again, I think those do not have numbers on them yet, is that correct? So, if council's blessing when we're done, what we'll do is we'll move those forward, add resolution numbers, and get them on for action next time. Brandon, are you with us?
Bailey.
I'm sorry, Bailey, are
Actually,
you with us?
Bailey with Great West Engineering. Yep, you got me, Mayor?
I do. Do you want to introduce this, or do you want to have, Mr. Maples introduce this?
I don't mind, either way. I think, I probably have, I think I should probably do it here, Mike, and then, if, we could fill in anything
All right,
there.
you have the floor, sir.
That works. All right, so, hey, everybody, Bailey with Great West Engineering, obviously. So earlier this year, I think we, started probably last year, developing a plan for the bank stabilization project, near the intersection of Knight Street and Cooper. Some emergency, fixes were done there in, I believe, 22, just part of the emergency procedures post-flood. This project is going to be a more permanent solution for that intersection, protecting the city utilities such as water and sewer in that intersection. Anyway, we late last year surveyed the site to develop a alternative analysis for the city to review based on a couple different alternatives that we saw fit to fix that site permanently. And so after surveying that, we developed a memorandum that came up with two different alternatives to address that bank stabilization project down there. And basically, the two alternatives were to push the bank back out to the original where the bank was pre-flood of 22. And the second option was to kind of stabilize the bank where it is now, but give it give it more sloping and add riprap and just make sure that all those cities' utilities are going to be protected at the intersection. So going through the alternative analysis, we developed a decision matrix based on cost and the level of effectiveness of the solution to protect those utilities. And with that, and some of the hydraulic modeling that we conducted to see if we could meet DNRC regulations, because they have strict regulations about meeting no rise in the river once you do improvements to the river. So they don't want any improvement to raise the water level and affect, anybody else downstream. So we basically landed on option 2 in that alternative analysis that we conducted. And ultimately, we did that because just based on the cost, the ability to meet the no rise, and just the level of protection we think it's going to provide for the city down there at 9th Street and Cooper. So we went back to view the site, and we noticed that some of the fill had been taken out. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the site, but there's some emergency riprap that was placed there at the intersection in 22. And so there was some fill just to the north of that into the river that we were going to kind of do some improvements on top of and add this bank stabilization project down to that existing bridge abutment just adjacent to the power station down there. And ultimately, with that fill being removed, we had looked at kind of the hydraulic capacity of the cross section of the river through that area, and just what we would gain by putting a bunch of fill in that area, and decided that we would amend that alternative to end where the current riprap at that intersection ends, and not to disturb anything to the north of the intersection of 9th Street and Cooper there. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying to orient you guys there, but so that's what we ultimately decided on, and then we sent Dave over some resolutions to adopt the preferred alternative. And then we also conducted an environmental assessment of the site. That's basically just a document that you fill out that addresses all sorts of potential problems to the environment with the project. That document, that draft EA, was posted at City Hall for approximately 10 days. We didn't receive any comment during that comment period. So we also then chose to hand David a resolution to adopt that environmental assessment. So I think that's all. Obviously, ready to answer any questions, Dave.
Bailey, is there a logical order of which of those 2 resolutions would be adopted first? Is it to accept the determination, or is it to adopt the FEMA bank stabilization project?
I don't think there's as long to get the project moving forward, and especially if we want to try to get this project conducted and constructed early next year, I would say probably the resolution to adopt the preferred alternative as set forth by us, the engineer, would be probably the highest priority, just so we can get the ball rolling on getting the joint permit application sent in and get that ball rolling, because that's probably going to be our main holdup, is just getting that permit.
I'm thinking if we do this both next time for action, that we'd actually accept the environmental assessment first, just to say that we're good, and then also accept that FEMA bank stabilization, which is the critical of the 2.
Sure. Yep.
Council, have any thoughts on that?
That seems appropriate.
Any questions on what it is we're doing so that we can take action on it next time? Councilmember Conley, anything?
No, I mean, from what I understand, is they're just going to reinforce what's currently right there.
Yeah,
The
there
bottom line?
was less commas in this version than returning the bank to its original course.
Makes sense.
It'll be a minimal amount of fill put in, and then the bank will be armored and sloped to the river.
Rebuilding it the way it was and doing the same thing.
Councilmember Ronnie, questions, comments?
Trust the experts on this one.
I'm not gonna tell them where to put the rocks.
Councilmember Key. All right, with council's blessing, we'll put that for action, both of those resolutions for action at the next meeting. All right. So noted. All right, council, yeah. All right, Bailey, that's, anything else you want to add before you take your static away?
Nope, I think that's everything I wanted to cover, but obviously if you guys have any questions, just feel free to call the office and get a hold of me.
All right, thank you, sir, appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Mike, thanks, Mayor, thanks, council.
Thank you.
All right, council, actually, this is Public Works we're on.
Yep.
And, Council Tupin, were you leading this as a co-chair? The discussion, I kind of jumped in and
Yeah,
did
go
that
ahead.
first one, didn't I?
Yep, that's all right.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I am A-okay with that. So yeah, going into Public Works, bear with me here while I pull that up. I got
Do you want to look at
distracted
my
by
notes?
static. No, I think I'm good, actually. So another thing that we were working on is reviewing applications for Northwestern Energy grants for, solar carport and restroom, solar on the restroom roof at Lions Park. Mike has brought some concerns just in overall engineering, but it sounds like we're making good headway to make this a real possibility. The only concern now is how much it's actually going to cost for a solar carport, specifically to make sure that it's engineered for commercial and city use, not residential use. Now, that being said, Northwestern Energy on these grants does ask for a 10% match, and 90% is covered. So realistically, Mike feels pretty confident that we'll be able to make some budget moves to make this work, depending on what numbers we receive. But tentatively, we are moving forward. Otherwise, the applications look great. With the help of Alan Betts, who has been a massive help in a lot of these things. So, and then in terms of the solar for the restrooms, that also looks good to go and no real concerns on budget. There's also some concerns with the carport as well with conduit. And then we're also gonna potentially need a variance for the restroom roof, is correct, kind of get those, it's all in the same little location, so sometimes I jumble it up. But, Alan also did help with putting together a resolution. I did fine tune those and should have those ready, for discussion at next week's agenda, or next week's council, or next council meeting, and then, action the following.
Have we had any conversations as we look at turning our free gas station into a covered free gas station? Have we looked at the options of putting a card reader in there so that folks are able to pay for the electricity they're using rather than just a donation box that folks may or may not do?
The discussion's been had. I don't know if we've actually looked into the prospect of it.
I think it would get more expensive than it'd be worth by the time we pay all the fees and.
Yeah. Internet processing.
fees
And truly, I think,
It's something to look into maybe, but.
Yeah.
Based on, when I looked into it for like a bulk water station, it costs more than the revenue of
That generates.
the station.
Yeah.
and honestly, just from, and this is just from things that I've heard from not just our chamber and community members and travelers and visitors, I think it's a wonderful amenity that even though it's free gas station for them, great. Like, I think that's awesome that we can provide that. I think that by having solar and keeping it from being a part of our grid and coming off of that, fantastic. But truly, people, when they go to travel, they're looking for more sustainable options. There are very few communities in our area that offer EV, let alone for free, and it encourages people to park, charge, and walk and explore our area and our community.
It does anchor them for several hours while they charge, so.
And so, I mean, truly, I think it's an amenity that is something that we should really embrace and be encouraging of. Again, I'm never opposed to trying to make revenue for the city, but at the same time, if it's something that's gonna be an additional headache, I think that this is one of those amenities that people truly do not only respect and love and enjoy, but I think it is a nice representation of our community being forward-thinking. And I don't know the stat off the top of my head. I have referenced it about 15 times in the past 2 weeks, so I should probably go figure out this damn stat. But but that being said, there is a stat, and I want to say it's upward around 60% of people between the ages of 25 and 45 make their travel plans based off the sustainable features within those areas. So the more we can add to those things, the better it's gonna be for our community, and better it's gonna be for tourism, better it's gonna be for us as a whole.
Well, and I think the biggest complaint our people in Red Lodge had was that the city was basically paying for that electricity. So by having these solar panels, the city will no longer be paying for that electricity.
Well,
So
to be
that-
fair, we're gonna pay for 10% of it up front, so we're just prepaying it.
Right.
And I think the concern is just when you go by and it's local vehicles, so if it's getting tourists in, it's anchoring them while they go shopping, that's wonderful. But,
Paying resort tax.
and paying resort tax, yeah, so.
But, you know, guess what? A lot of the locals pay resort tax as well.
We do,
And, you know, a lot of those tourists aren't gonna recognize what 10 plates means. So I think that truly, in terms of the pros and cons, I think the pros way outweigh the cons on that, so.
Explain to me about a variance. You're gonna go to the planning board and request
No.
a variance?
No, this would be through Northwestern Energy.
Northwest Energy variance.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Sandy, didn't mean to throw your head through a loop on that one.
right, so we have these discussions.
So yeah, we will have resolutions ready, and hopefully by then we'll also have some hard numbers in realizing if this is truly feasible, but at the very least, we can move forward because these grants are due in November. So yes, we are trying to be proactive, having these things in place. We'll have it up for discussion at the next council meeting and action the following.
Is the resolution at this point basically just authorizing a
Correct.
grant to be submitted on behalf of the city?
Correct, and there'll be two separate resolutions, one for the solar for the carport and one for the restroom.
In the interest of time, let's make sure as soon as you have some of those that are ready, that we get them to the city attorney, so that we don't have to do this
Yep.
in
I will send them
serial.
all.
We'll get the approvals done in parallel to meet the timeline. Other questions or comments?
Nope.
All right,
You'll do that?
I'll make sure
I'm on it right now.
she's making some notes, and then we'll pick up.
Oh, go ahead, I'm good.
Is there anything else from Public Works?
We're pretty much crushed there.
All right, you're done.
Well, I mean, we also have all sorts of wonderful things that Mike Maples is working on, but that being said,
Read the minutes.
Read the minutes, you can see what he is doing out there in the community, and a lot of it was already mentioned in their comments. So,
Okay.
thank you, Mike, for your hard work. And thank you, Alan, for doing things, and thank you, everybody, and everything, all the time.
Is there any additional correspondence that has come forward that the council feels appropriate to bring or add to the record at this time?
No.
I did forward one that is in a packet, and I didn't hear anything back if anyone was able to respond to her.
Can you refresh the details, please?
Yeah, very last,
Stop sign on 12th
stop
and
sign
Hayden.
on, yeah.
It used to have a stop sign there.
I forwarded it to Lonnie and to you to, add to the correspondence and see if you could answer that. To your long list of.
I'll add that to the ones that we have,
Is that where the
letter.
bridge is?
Yeah, the bridge is at 13th.
Yeah, okay. Because I know where the bridge is, they changed the stop sign, they changed the stop sign.
Yeah, it's not on Hagen, it's actually on
Yeah.
13th.
Okay. So this is what, walk up.
All right, thank you. Any other correspondence? All right, hearing none, what we'll do at this time is we'll go ahead and open up the meeting for public comment and any public matter that is within the city's jurisdiction. We'll start out with those in the room, and then we'll move to online. I was going to see something. Public comment section is open. Let's go to the room. Not seeing any. We'll go to online. Any public comment, if you would turn on your camera, raise a hand, come off mute to indicate an interest to speak. Going twice, which is code for I don't see anyone indicating. And 3 times, we'll go ahead and close the public comment. And I will entertain a motion for item 11.
Move to adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.